Let's see. Okay, guys, it's Dr. Matt Harkness with your medical practice mentor, and I'm here with Brian Yee from Motion Stability in Atlanta, Georgia. So Brian and I met each other through Evidence in Motion Executive Private Practice Management Program. It's a mouthful. In 2013, right, Brian? I think it was.
Is it that long ago? Man, wow. Okay, yeah, it was 13. Yeah.
So this feature that we're doing today is what I'm calling a spotlight feature. And Brian is my first spotlight featured guest. So congratulations, Brian. But
I'm honored. I'm honored.
So yes, Brian has a hybrid cash insurance practice in Atlanta. And so, Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, why you went into private practice all those years ago, I think in 06 you started. So yeah, give us a little overview of yourself and why you went into private practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt, for the opportunity. And we bonded all these years together. A huge respect for you as a person, your leadership, your consulting business, everything you've done. You've always been a good example to me. So thanks for the opportunity to share back, first of all. Yeah, my story, I've graduated in 99, first of all, 1999, way back when, at Northwestern University. And then I'm originally from Southern California, having lived more than 5 miles away from the beach my whole life, and worked for Physiotherapy Associates, kind of corporate, the whole corporate thing. And went to Australia to get my kind of master's MNIPS degree at University of Queensland in Australia. So Gwen Joel, Paul Hodges, Lerma Mosley, those guys were my mentors. I was really focused on being the best therapist I could possibly be first. One of my boss, when I was a tech before going to PT school, was a great physical therapist, and he decided to take a year off and to study in Australia. And I was like, why in the world would you do that? He goes, that's where the best therapists are at. That's where you get trained, you get your mentorship, you get your, really make you think. And he came back right before I got to PT school, and I remember watching him practice, and he was a world of difference. I can remember him just watching him. I was like, I want to be that guy. So when I finished PT school, worked for Physiotherapy Associates, and the classic corporate train, they invited me to be a clinic director within 2 years. I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to wait. I'm going to go to Australia, get my training done right first before I go into more management, business, things like that. And went in 2004 to Australia, Queensland. Just opened the whole world to me clinically first. Just the way of thinking, clinical reasoning models, some of the Maitland reasoning models, neurodynamics is kind of stuff I fell in love with, motor control models with Gwen Joel and stuff like that. Came back to LA afterwards in 04 and 05. And because I was this top-notch therapist, they stuck me in a buyout practice that Physiotherapy Associates corporate chain bought out, that they stuck me in this clinic that walking in the door, I was the number 5 grossing clinic in the nation.
Wow.
With no management experience, but they wanted the best therapists to be the lead therapist. So like expectations as me, number 1 grossing clinic in the nation, in the country. I walked in the door, it's kind of like, yeah, let's do this. Not knowing the clinic was 80% workers' comp, and Governor Schwarzenegger at the time in 04, workers' comp was being overutilized, or basically being abused in California. Shut it all down. And so I ended up losing 60% of my business in a year. Not to my fault. Corporate was, physiotherapy corporate was mad at me for it's my fault that I lost business when it was totally regulation control. Fired 25 employees. I had 17 therapists at the time, 40 employees, something like that, something crazy. I laid off 25 employees in a year, lost all my business, and they blamed me for it. So I say that and said and done because I ended up moving to Atlanta in 05, met my wife at the time. So I moved out here for her. So my wife's a physician at CDC. So she's public health, she's clinical, but she's public health work. And we decided to stay here in Atlanta. And so as we planned in Atlanta, I didn't want to do the corporate route anymore. I didn't want to have anyone corporate tell me that we need to build 8 units or see X amount of patients to make the money so the private equity guys or stock shareholders can make money on the stock shares, and felt really called that it's really about the patient first. And as also was frustrated because, the reimbursement, as we all know, in-network insurances are decreasing every year. Medicare reimbursement is going down every year. I felt with my training from Australia in chronic pain management, spinal care, MNIPS, the whole thing, that I had much more value than, you know, the $80 a visit, $75 a visit we're getting in network insurance. So as my wife and I decided to stay here in Atlanta in 2008, started a private practice with really the determination to say I'm worth more than insurance reimbursements. Was lucky to fortunate to find my old alumni therapist at Northwestern, where I graduated from. I'll say it out loud on this video call. Her name's Stacy Hosp, now Stacy Crumley. She was a physical therapist, gone Pilates, more wellness training stuff, stretch therapy. She helped start a golf fitness studio called Terminus Club here in Atlanta, which is sponsored by Nike Golf. And so they have a golf training facility, 3D motion capture reality. She said, hey, we need a physical therapist who does more to rehab stuff. I'll do the wellness stuff. I said, great. So it gave me a piggyback launch to launch into a wellness kind of facility, an integrated facility. My startup cost was a $250 portable massage table. I was in the red within the first or second visit, or second in the black, not the red, as in the black in the first or second visit, and started to charge cash. So I think it started like $125 a session for an hour. We did one-on-one care, and was an integrative model with golf professionals and golf trainers and fitness trainers and stretch therapists. So it gave me an avenue from a market share of people who didn't mind paying cash for the visits, as opposed to straight physical therapy. Their stereotypical physical therapy is much more integrative, right? So my first client I had, they're like, do you know who that was? I'm like, no. They're like, that's like one of the heads of Augusta National Golf Club. I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, I know golf and stuff like that, but I was throttled into the golf world, especially in Atlanta, where golf is such a big deal. I started to work with very affluent people who were very respectful for my services and felt very honored that they'd be willing to pay for my services. And within a year, I was able to hire another therapist, cash business. And within, by 2 more years, had a third therapist. And so we ran a business, cash business. We quickly then turned into cash business to, we'll submit claims free out-of-network insurance. Not because people couldn't afford it. I just felt like people had out-of-network insurance they could use. So they can make, 60% on the co-insurance from the insurance company, then great. So for a while, we actually started balance billing. So we started doing like 40%, your co-insurance is 40%, we'll charge you 40% and you get reimbursed 60%. It got really tricky. It was just really hard to follow that. So even our very wealthy clients were like, why don't you just charge me up front, submit the claim for me, get the check. It was just actually a lot easier for me too. So by like, I don't know, 2012 or so, we just started charging up front. We'll submit the claims for you on your behalf. Where I know a lot of cash businesses will give people an invoice with CPT codes and you submit yourself. If you're going to pay that kind of premium price for your services, I mean, the least you can do is submit claims for that patient. I think that's a customer service thing. So they don't have to worry about it, right? Why put it on them? I know a lot of clinics who do that, and so I'm not trying to knock those people. That's just my take on customer service. I know you're a customer service too, Matt. So the idea of providing that service, and so even claims get denied, we'll resubmit them for them so they get paid and stuff like that. So we started doing that in 2011 or 12. We've gone up from $125 now, charging basically $210 an hour now. We do a self-pay discount of $180, and then we submit claims that insurance is to $210 an hour. And we have now 4 or 5 therapists out of network doing that. So it's more of an out of network cash business. We're about roughly 50% self-pay, like straight self-pay, and 50% out of network insurance. And surprisingly, a lot of people have really good out of network insurance policies. Some people pay 100% coverage. So they don't mind seeing us when it's 100%, 20, 80% coverage. They're paying 20, 30 bucks a session. You'll be surprised how much out of network policies sometimes actually cover a lot, actually. From there, Matt, now we talked about this before, like my goal is not to kind of just serve people with high net worth. I don't feel called to do that. I wanted to prove that I was worth more than my insurance reimbursed. That was probably more my drive to do cash business, where a lot of other people do cash business because they want to serve more socioeconomically wealthy people. I don't mind doing that, and then that's an honor to do that as well. My goal is to serve clientele who deserve care the way they deserve it, regardless of their socioeconomic or financial needs. And so even for the 3 therapists, we were getting frustrated because even the common ankle sprains, post-surgical patients, the things that a lot of people seek physical therapy out for, didn't fit in our price model. And we felt bad that we charge $125, $130, $150 a session. So we'd outsource it to a physical therapy clinic down the street, and you can take your network insurance. So we lost a lot of market share, which most people want to use their insurance, and now you can't deny that. So we realized in 2013, we opened a second subsidiary practice in the same location. So separate NPI number, separate LLC, separate bank number, different Medicare number. And we basically ran a 2-option practice some people would then take in-network insurance, and then the other people take out-of-network insurance. And basically we would not upsell one or the other. We give people the choice. So even at the front desk, when people call, we say, look, we now would call our senior therapist versus our staff therapist. If you want to see your senior therapist, you pay out-of-network rates. If you want to use your insurance, you can see the staff therapist for your in-network insurance. And we feel like it's a very honest, open integrity, transparent model. We tell our price points up front, so we don't hide any fees, and people are respectful to it. And so we've been able to grow that model since 2013. It's taken some branding and some different configurations, but I feel like now doing this for a good 8 years now, we have a really solid model that way.
So Brian, yeah, a couple questions. One thing I always think about, if you're cash only, I'm kind of a both and guy. I mean, it doesn't have to be just cash or just insurance. It can be both. And you're a great example of how you've done that. And so, my question would be like, I remember early on, I recall that you had a tough time with, patients a little confused. I think even at one time you had 2 different names.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, this, how do you do the both and from the patient's perspective? I know you touched on it already, but that journey a little bit that you guys struggled with,
Yeah, sure.
So,
yeah, so great question. In 2013, so the brand name in 08, our brand even now is called Motion Stability Physical Therapy. That's what's known in the community. In 2013, we opened a second entity, and we're like, what do we do with it brand wise? We thought that rather than kind of call it what we call it now, Dub, our brand now is Motion Stability, website's Motion Stability, phone calls Motion Stability, and then when they call, we'll say, look, we have 2 options for you. We call them our senior therapists. So we kind of dummy down to other brands. So it's like we have senior therapists who take out of network, and we have staff therapists take in network. We kind of just dummy it all down. In 2013, we had 2 little brands on the sides of the wall said Motion Stability, and actually a sub brand of that, or sub tagline of it was called Unresolved Pain Specialists. And then our other logo on our wall was Movement Sports Physical Therapy. And our strategy at the time was your more complicated patients, unresolved pain, chronic pain, ongoing pain. You see these guys, sports patients, athletes, ankle sprains go this way in network insurance. And there's many confusions we had just because of 2 signs on the wall. You can already imagine what's going to happen. And then also people who are like chronic pain, they're like, how come I can't use my insurance? Some people are athletes like, I want to see the best of the best. So it created clinical confusion as well. So by 2015, we just said, you know what, that's a mistake. So let's go Motion Stability. We sub-brand to Faculty Practice to Spine Sports Clinic, which is still on our website now. We're about to redo our website as we speak. And now we've learned to say, look, we're just Motion Stability. That's all. The consumer just needs to know one brand name. And then just like a hair salon, you have your master hair cutters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you pay your certain rate for this, and you pay your rate for the junior therapist or junior hair cutters, right? That's kind of the model we're going for a brand perspective. So Van Michael or whoever these high-end fashion salons are, that's kind of the model we're going through a brand perspective. So Motion Stability is our brand name. On our intake paperwork, when they use their insurance, it's very clear on our liability that you will be billed through the legal entity is called Westside Physical Therapy, the DBA is Movement Sports, but they very well know that the EOBs and claims will come through the in-network insurance LLC. It won't say Motion Stability on it, so they're very clear about that. So claims going through out-of-network insurance or self-paid, the senior therapists are claimed through Motion Stability. That's from a legal standpoint.
So, and do you find so like if a patient calls, they don't know you, do they generally take the insurance route? And if they do know your reputation, they're more likely to go for the cash?
Yeah. So the out-of-network therapists, the 4 or 5 of us there, it's really name referral. Go see Brian, go see Deanna, go see Dustin, go see Dara, go see Stephanie. So it's much more that stuff. You want to see these guys because they'll figure it out. If you're finding us online or on the insurance provider directory or whatever, most likely to go insurance. So we have this great call script. It's on an Excel spreadsheet. We have this like whole tree diagram decision tree that our front desk we train them on. So when they call, they say, you know, what can motion stability, and they say, I'm a new patient. They say, how do you get referred here? So we have these decision trees that say, look, I was referred to see Brian. Great, you know, Brian's out of network, just so you know, blah, blah, blah. He's out of network. Is that a problem? That's fine. We also, you know, we'll say we'll have in-network insurance options as well. So a lot of times actually patients will come see me first because they're recommended by their friends or the doctors to figure it out. They said, look, I can't afford his rates long-term. And, you know, we'll give them option from a liability and ethics standpoint. We're legally supposed to say, hey, look, you have options to go in-network insurance contracts here, or you can go to another clinic as well, give them options, kind of like a doctor referral. You can't just say, go see this therapist, right? So we try to, from a fairness standpoint, say, hey, look, you know, we have options. You can go to another therapy clinic as well to take care of your network insurance. Obviously, the advantage of being here is because I'm here physically, so I can watch my other therapists do what they're doing, pop in, say you're doing. So most likely they're going to come that way. I hate to say that, but anyway, that's how it works. So they'll go in network insurance a lot of times. A lot of times they'll just stay with me. So it kind of goes to take.
So Brian, just to clarify, so you legally and accounting wise, they're kind of two separate things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe talk a little bit about, I think, Brian, you know, we've been doing this over 20 years, right? So a long time. So eventually, you know, I'm sure even now you're not seeing as many patients as you were early on, but talk about the advantage of having this hybrid model in terms of scaling. And, you know, kind of, you know, yeah, just the advantages to the hybrid model.
Yeah, great question.
Only and kind of, you know, what you kind of see in the future, and even your role as you know, maybe a while yet, but kind of what do you see and
So, you know, some of the advantages of in-network is it is more scalable, right? So out-of-network therapists, once you get out-of-network therapists in your practice, they're going to be pretty good dang therapists, which is you want to have, no doubt, right? So, but they're also will get a name brand themselves. It'll be much more name recognition. They're more likely to start their own practice if they want to. The ideas of partnership models, different things like that. I also don't think out-of-network practice is very scalable. Like you can't just sell it to somebody unless you sell it within to your own number two, your clinic director, things like that. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't really seen that happen yet. Of other cash businesses I know, maybe it does happen because that person can say, why am I going to buy the practice when I can start my own practice myself? So, you know, the collaboration of out-of-network therapists, the ones who currently work here now, I've been hugely blessed by. They'd rather stay together as a team. Some people don't want to own their own business as well. So that's another thing from a recruiting standpoint. So I've been blessed to have that. I've figured out financial models as well to hopefully they feel like they're being heavily compensated for their time as opposed to start their own business as well. So there's financial models that need to be there because they're employees as well as opposed to 1099s. The scalability in network obviously is obviously better because you can, if that in network therapist, you know, leaves, you can put another one in there, and as long as they're there for an insurance, not say it doesn't matter, but every therapist counts. But it's easier to scale that way. Yeah, well, the one thing I didn't get to say, actually, the one thing that I'm really proud of my practice is not even the in-network and out-of-network, although I'm very proud of that. The one thing that's a differentiator for us is our clinical training model. So we talked about this before. So we're heavily tied in with Mercer University Physical Therapy. There's great universities here, PT schools here in Atlanta as well. So I'm not trying to disregard any of those other PT schools, but we have a great affiliation with Mercer. So we actually have an in-training system within our system of a residency fellowship model within our clinic. So typically what happens is our clinic is they're recruited by us and want to work for us, the younger therapists, part of our residency model through Mercer. We mentor them and then farm them into their fellowship model. And then the idea is after like 2 or 3 years after going through residency fellowship, hopefully by the time you will have a then position to stay in network and then graduate to out of network over time. So we have a kind of an inbred farm system that way. It's been really great to do that. So with my training in Australia, I've been able to graduate 10, 12 residents through Mercer through our practice. We've gone 3 or 4 fellows now. So it's been a blessing to actually have that kind of training system internal with us, partnered with the university, and then be able to graduate them through our system and actually have that system grow our model from a farming system. The nice thing about that from a scale standpoint, as you know, too, like you get different therapists from different schools of thought. Everyone's treating differently, right? Mm-hmm. say we have to treat all the same, but with the Mercer model, which is very Australian based. So Joe Donnelly, who now lives in Florida, he's actually St. Augustine's now. He trained in Australia. He formed the fellowship residency model at Mercer. So the clinical reasoning models are very consistent with what I learned in Australia. And so we have a very Australian-based clinical reasoning model going through manual-based therapy stuff, movement-based stuff. So that whole model is kind of creates some level of baseline for us. It makes it much more scalable and consistent, not only in network therapists, but also out of network. And we all have our different slants, we all have our different specialties, we all have our different things, but there's a baseline nomenclature or jargon we talk about. That's going to make us more scalable than anything, plus in-network insurances.
So do you think that just off the cuff, do you feel like it would be 50% insurance, 50% out of network, like down the road, or do you feel like it's more 70%
I
in
mean,
network?
revenue wise right now, we're probably 65-35 out of network, in network, just because we're billing more out of network.
Yeah.
The reimbursement's lower, so you have to do higher volume in network, right? So probably, 60-40, 55-45. If it's trying to get 80-20, I'd be a little more worried about that in terms of out of network. I want to, like I said, like the scalability in network is key. So my guess is 65-35 is probably healthy, 70-30, maybe 60-40 around there. That'd probably be a good play. So we're always going to be probably more of a premium practice out of network. And then in network is something that kind of helps create a farm system. Like I said, it provides younger therapists opportunity to learn. It helps pay fixed expenses, right? So overhead, fixed costs versus variable costs, right? So the fixed cost stuff that we learned in EIM, it helps cover those costs, right? Because it's a little more predictable.
So one thing we struggled with, we have a great pelvic floor specialty, and we're a traditional insurance model right now, and so they're backed up. We got a month waiting list, and we are hesitant at times to pull it out of network because, like you said before, there is a great need in terms of patients that have insurance and they need the care, and we have the ability to provide it. But the nature of pelvic floor, it takes a bit more time. It takes some more one-on-one kind of trust building, and really there's a lot of empathy that goes on. And so yeah, I mean, one thing, it sounds to me too, Brian, the way you guys do it, I mean, there is always an option for your patients that come to you, meaning they can go faculty, or they can go insurance. It's not like, I'm sorry, we can't serve you. So I think that basically you're not turning away patients. Is that correct?
No, not at all. So I feel proud that we can serve the community and then give people choice, right? So I'm a free market guy. Like, you have the choice to go anywhere you want to go, right? So it's just kind of like, we want to make sure we meet your needs, financial needs first, but also your clinical needs, right? So like I do a lot of golf injuries. I do some nerve stuff. I'm Michael Shacklock and Neurodynamic Solutions. I'm on his teaching faculty. With our brand, we got known as like unresolved pain specialists, right? So you think about out of network, like I know some other people do out of network for like just straight fitness and other therapy stuff. And that's great. What we found is, you think about, the duration of what patient populations typically come to physical therapy. It's usually chronic pain and post-surgical, right? So surgical probably, out of network probably doesn't make so much sense. We get them once in a while out of network, but that doesn't make sense financially, right? You're gonna go ACL post-op 2-3 times a week. You're gonna go 12 weeks. You're probably gonna use your insurance and find someone that takes your insurance. And you probably don't need someone who's a hardcore manual skilled labor person to do that, right? So chronic pain, unresolved pain, pelvic floor, complicated injury stuff, scoliosis would be another one. So Schroth, we don't have a Schroth therapist yet, but that'd be a good one. We have a pelvic floor therapist who's out of network. And the idea would be, to be honest with you, we also, because like something like pelvic floor, because it's such a specialty skill set, right? I personally think that person is really good at it. They're still learning in-network insurance, but they're really good at what they do. They should be able to build out a network for that, right? People should be willing to pay for a subspecialty care in that regard. In my dream world, we'd like to have like a resident or fellow who desires to be a pelvic floor specialty, and they only have 2 options. That'd be our ideal world. Right now, we don't have that currently. But if we had an out-of-network therapist who was a specialist in pelvic floor therapist, we could do pelvic floor work, but the person couldn't afford it and could be, mentored by out-of-network therapists, and an in-network therapist could take in-network and do pelvic floor examinations. That'd be the ideal world. That'd be this ideal situation.
So Brian, can you, I mean, is it, if you're a clinician, can you got to kind of stay in one camp? Is that, I mean, I'm not sure, like you're out of network. I mean, you can't, can you do insurance? So you're just out of network, right?
Yeah, you're one or the other. You're out of network or you're in network. So there are different payrolls, right? So the in-network therapists, they're on a different payroll system and just like that. You can't go back and forth.
Okay.
I mean, unless you're out of network, you decide to take certain insurance, you could do that and say, hey, we're going to take Blue Cross Shield. I know a couple of practices that take Blue Cross Shield and Medicare because they reimburse relatively high and stuff like that. So it helps cover the payer mix as well, stuff like that. So you could choose to be in network. Like a lot of therapy practice, even doctors, they'll say, well, I accept certain insurances, some I don't. So if the ones you don't, you're out of network. So essentially that's a hybrid model, right? We have it very clear that if you're working as a senior therapist, we're 100% out of network. And then we take Medicare, but we're a non-par provider for Medicare versus participating provider. So for our senior therapists who take out-of-network insurance, we take Medicare, but we charge up front, and then we submit claims for the patient as a non-participating provider. They get a check in the back end. So we average like maybe $115 a visit for Medicare non-participating, where traditional Medicare, right? They're not paying anything. Their secondary insurance covers the 20%, things like that. So surprisingly, we do about, I don't know, 20% Medicare, 30% Medicare for our out-of-network practice. And then even in-network, they take Medicare. And so our Medicare patients have the choice. You can see your senior therapist, you're going to pay $115, $120, $30 up front. You'll get 78% of the back end. And they're informed by that, and they still choose to pay that money to see one of us.
So Brian, speak to, someone that's just, I mean, I'll even say it to myself, we have not actually done this yet, but we would like to, or someone else watching, what is kind of the hurdles, and give us some advice, is it logistics and just kind of being patient with the, the separate entities and the communication, or what's kind of the hurdles that we should be aware of, and what tips would you have for making the transition?
To have a hybrid practice, to have an out-of-network practice? Yeah. In my mind, two main things. You better be a really good therapist. You better have something something that's special to offer, hands-on wise, clinical wise, technique wise. I'm not a big fan of modalities and the laser light shows. You need to have that stuff, but if you're going to go that world and be an out-of-network therapist, but if you don't have the hands-on skills, if you don't have the clinical reasoning skills to figure out affective components and central pain processing and autonomic stuff and other differentiating factors, if you don't have those skills, I think you need time to learn that stuff clinically first. That's why I'm a big proponent of residencies and fellowships, to have that mentorship, because Australia, it kicked my butt, but it opened my lens of different things. I think a lot of younger therapists right now are racing to get to out-of-network or self-pay early. I think they need to wait for a little bit and just let your clinical skill sets set in first. That's first. I see too many young therapists going cash business because they think they just need to do it. I don't know. I think you got a finite shelf life, and if you can be successful, I think you have a finite patient database to work from. I'll say it that way too. So some people can just market themselves out of network or self-pay. Great, good for you. I'm really that's kind of job well done. So I'm not trying to knock those people. Second thing, I'd say customer service, man. I mean, Matt, I've learned from you the idea of pillows folded and breath mints on the thing when it's done. Just those finishing touches. I didn't tell you my whole story. I'm youngest of 4 kids, and we all have our own small practices. We're both half physical therapists and half pharmacists. And my dad, 50 years Yeast Pharmacy in Long Beach, California, just sold and closed, not closed, just sold this year. So 50 years. My brother took it over about roughly 10 years ago. And my dad retired. My sister was a pharmacist as well. So she did compound pharmacy in the Yeast Pharmacy while my brother ran the pharmacy. Huge customer service. They walk in the door. Hey, Mr. Harkness, how you doing? How's life? How are the kids doing? How's Florida? I mean, just huge engagement. My brother would, if you could, have a disco ball coming down and have a laser light show and just put on a great, not show, but a great energy that when you walk in the door, you've been in my practice, right? There's energy, there's openness, there's a vibrance, right? It's not overkill, but it's just a sense of welcome. I tell my front desk staff, if I'm not hearing you laughing and talking and giggling with the patients at the front desk, you're not doing your job. So a lot of times medical practice is so closed slide window. How can I help you? Collect your copay, check in, check out. That care starts at the first call. That care starts at the first email. That first time they walk in the door, you know that as well. In network or out of network, that's a private practice thing anyway. So when you're paying out of network rates, you better make sure you're on the ball. So these people are expecting, I'm paying cash up front. I better be on time. I better get my bill done. I better get great service. I mean, they're expecting more than even more you're expecting as a private practice owner itself already. So think like Ritz-Carlton, 5-star hotel. They want that concierge. They call up, my back attorney, I want to get in today. Great, we'll make it happen, right? So you better find ways to accommodate. I personally give my cell phone out for text messaging. A lot of my therapists don't do that. So I give them a text and I say, look, just don't text me late at night. Like like when dinner time's dinner time, then don't text me at nighttime. But you can text me all day during daytime. I will accommodate best as possible. But when I go home, it's family time. Weekends, don't bother me the weekends unless you really need to, right? So there's an open there. I have, not every therapist does that. That's my style, so like that. So customer service, that brand. So we've been fortunate with this whole unresolved pain stuff, and I'm actually about to launch my first book called Unresolved, actually. So really capturing that market for complicated injuries. Like, hey man, like if this therapist or doctor can't figure it out, go see these guys, they'll figure it out, right? That alone right there is like, they're willing to pay a little more money to figure out why the pain's there. So chronic pain, in my mind, is, which includes pelvic floor, which includes other complicated injuries, right? So migraine headaches, there's a lot of things that people suffer from. So you can really target TMJ, right? There's things you can do that can really do that. Or you're just a really stud sports athlete therapist, like, so you have NFL stars, you know, whatever, and people want to see you because you're working at the stars. So you could do it that way too.
Well, Brian, I tell you what, you know, you're a real inspiration. You've done a great job. Motionstability.com to check out your website. I'm excited to see your revision coming up. But yeah, no, thank you for taking the time for us. You know, I believe that, you know, the world needs great physical therapists, and, you know, it's good medicine. And I think, you know, this idea of both and, meaning giving options to the patients, being able to provide for our families, and creating a great business and future for our families and our teams. You know, our time is now.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for preaching the message this way. And I hope hopefully this message, when people view it, especially the younger therapists they're hungry to go. You and I remember those days back in 20 years ago, we started these practices, like you're hungry and you want to move your ship. And so for those who have that fire in their belly, go for it. Just make sure you do it the right way, and don't just, don't do a false sell. Make sure you're true to your integrity of who you are. Make sure you're a great clinician, both clinically as well as customer service. So.
All right, good, Brian. That's it. We'll end the recording there.